Okay, let's just jump right in. Here's a fact that sounds, well, it sounds completely impossible. Every single country on Earth is in debt. Yep, every nation, from the richest to the very poorest, owes money. And that right there leads to a really strange question. If everyone owes money, who exactly are we all supposed to be paying back?
And the scale of this is it's mind-bending. Total global debt has blown past $315 trillion. To try and put that into perspective, that's nearly 3 times the size of the entire global economy. It's a number so huge it almost feels fake.
But here's the secret. This debt, this enormous number, it isn't just a burden. It's the invisible scaffolding that our entire modern world is built on. I mean, every market boom, every bust, every major world event is happening on a foundation made of promises and IOUs.
So we come right back to that central paradox. It's a puzzle that seems to defy basic logic. Who holds all this debt? Are we in debt to aliens? Some secret global bank run out of a volcano lair? Well, the answer is way more complex, and honestly, way more surprising.
To unravel this whole mystery, we actually have to go back in time. Not to Wall Street, but to a 17th century battlefield. A place where a desperate need for cash accidentally invented the very idea of national debt, and in the process created modern finance itself.
So picture this. It's 1694. England is totally broke and fighting this incredibly expensive war with France. The king comes up with a revolutionary deal for his merchants. Give me money to finance the war now, and you'll get a steady stream of interest payments forever, all backed by future taxes. This model was so powerful, it just spread like wildfire. France and the Netherlands copied it, it funded the American Revolution, and it completely flipped the script on what debt even means. Suddenly, having debt wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of your country's credibility.
And that brilliant idea created the core financial instrument of this entire system, the government bond. See, it's not just an IOU. It's a tradable promise. It's a piece of paper, or, a digital entry now, that represents pure trust in a government's future. This is the seed from which that entire $315 trillion forest grew.
Okay, so with that history in our back pocket, let's get back to our central question and finally unmask the creditor. And to make this really clear, we're going to use the biggest debtor of them all as our case study, the United States.
The U.S. national debt is sitting at a truly mind-boggling $38 trillion. That's the highest it's ever been, and it is the largest pile of debt any single entity has ever racked up in history. So who does America owe all this money to? Now this is where it gets really interesting, because this chart just completely shatters a common myth. The vast majority of U.S. debt, a full 2/3 of it, is held right at home. It's owned by American banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and even the U.S. central bank itself, the Federal Reserve. And what about that foreign-held debt? We always hear that the U.S. is in debt to China. And while that's technically true, this chart shows just how small that piece of the pie really is. Japan is actually the #1 foreign holder, and China's total share, it's only about 2% of the entire U.S. debt. So the crucial point to get is this. It's a closed loop. The U.S. Treasury issues bonds. American institutions buy them. And American taxpayers fund the interest payments that then flow into American retirement accounts. America mostly owes money to America. And this same basic pattern, it's replicated all over the globe.
I love this quote because it just nails it. The entire global financial system is like a giant game of hot potato. The whole world is just passing these promises around. Japan lends to the US lends to Europe, Europe lends to developing nations, and then those nations turn around and buy bonds from Western countries. Every single IOU is secured by another IOU.
But this leads to an even deeper secret, and it's one that defies everything we're taught about debt in our personal lives. It's the really counterintuitive truth about how all of this government debt actually works.
Think about it. When you or I take out a loan for a car or a house, the goal is always to pay back the principal, that original amount we borrowed. But governments, they don't play by those rules. For them, the principal is almost never repaid. It's just rolled over.
And this is the key mechanism. It's called rolling over. When an old government bond is due, the government simply issues a new bond and uses that fresh money to pay off the holder of the old one. It's like paying off one credit card with another, but on a national scale, and it's designed to be done forever. So you see, the goal isn't to get to zero. It's just to keep the system going. The real products governments are selling isn't repayment. It's the steady, reliable stream of interest payments they provide and the safety their bonds offer to the entire global financial system.
To really understand this, let's ask a crazy question. What if the United States actually did it? What if, by some miracle, it paid off every single last dollar of that $38 trillion? The result would be absolute chaos. U.S. government bonds are seen as the safest financial asset on planet Earth. Pension funds, central banks, regular banks, they all depend on them. If U.S. bonds just vanished, the foundation of the global market would crumble, the money supply would shrink dramatically, and it would trigger a devastating economic collapse. Paying it all off would literally break the world economy. This entire system, this whole thing, is built on one very fragile idea: trust. It's the confidence that a government will always be able to roll over its debt. But what happens when that trust breaks? Well, the consequences aren't abstract financial concepts. They are deeply, deeply human.
Look at Greece in 2010. Investors lost faith that the country could keep paying its interest. The whole system just seized up. And the quote-unquote rescue came in the form of brutal austerity, massive spending cuts, tax hikes, and unemployment that just skyrocketed. For an entire generation of Greeks, a national debt crisis became a very personal sacrifice. Or take Sri Lanka in 2022. When it defaulted, it couldn't pay for essential imports anymore. That led to crippling fuel shortages, not enough food, and eventually the complete collapse of the government. This is what happens when the promises stop being believed.
And there's another cost here. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's not exactly the whole story. The interest on all this debt is paid for by taxpayers and workers, right? But it flows upward to the institutions and the wealthy investors who actually own the bonds. It's a massive, continuous transfer of wealth, which helps explain why global debt and global inequality have been rising pretty much hand in hand.
So, this brings us back around to the final answer, the solution to the paradox of a world where somehow everyone is in debt.
The world owes money to itself, held in a closed loop of trust, where actually repaying the principal is an illusion. The creditor isn't one person or one country. It's the system itself. A system that has figured out how to turn debt into money and runs on the collective belief that the music will never stop. But the final, unsettling question we're left with is, what happens when we realize this is a promise that can't be kept forever?